Jeremy Miner created one of the most used sales frameworks in the world. And for the past few years, it's been praised as one of the best sales closing systems online. And I've personally worked with Jeremy in 7th level for almost a year, so I know how it works and its inner workings. But now that his training company has trained thousands of salespeople, does it still work? Or are these strategies so overused that they can actually hurt the sale rather than help? As someone who's closing more than 8 million in sales a year, I wanted to see for myself. That's why in this video, we're gonna do a deep dive into Jeremy's NEPQ strategy to see what actually works and what maybe doesn't.
Actually cause your prospect to open up, engage with you. Let's go and take a look at NEPQ connection questions. So they do 3 main things. First of all, they're gonna take the focus off of you, immediately put it on the prospect. Okay, very, very quickly. We split.
That's a principle that I advise anyone to actually follow. Your focus should be off you right away. It should be on the prospect.
Split second. Doesn't matter if it's inbound leads that booked on your calendar, if it's an outbound lead who put in their name, email, and phone number from some type of ad, you're calling them back. They just don't know who's calling them and when, or it could even be a cold call, or it could be door to door. It really does not matter. B2B, B2C. I'm going to show you a few different examples. The second thing it does is it immediately gets the prospect into what we call results-based thinking over price or cost-based thinking. So if you get a lot of objections like your price is too high, can you do it cheaper, I'm just shopping around, I want to compare vendors, that's because you haven't learned yet how to take them from price or cost-based thinking into results-based thinking. Results-based thinking.
100% agreed so far. We have to constantly reframe the prospect to think about their problems, their challenges, their needs, and their world instead of what we sell, what we offer, our pricing. Right? That shift needs to constantly happen throughout the call.
Yes, let's say this is an outbound lead. Somebody's put in their name, email, phone number. Okay, and they know somebody's calling them back, they just don't know who when. You're gonna get some paper, I'm not kidding you, it's a pattern interrupt. If they hear the paper on the phone, triggers curiosity. What are they shuffling? Okay, these are pattern interrupts. You don't wanna sound like every salesperson's ever called them, because they put you in that bucket and they're not interested. We don't need it, can't afford it.
We agree with the principle.
Yeah, is this John? Yeah, hey John, it's Jeremy. Jeremy Miner with XYZ Company. It looks like you recently responded to an ad and you asked us to call you back about looking at getting possible help with your blank so that you guys could blank, right? Now, we're gonna plug in the problem and repeat back the end result of what we do. Okay, that's gonna depend on the industry and I'll show you a few different examples. Now,
so what Jeremy does here is he reminds the prospect the point of resonance, like what did they see from us in the first place, and he voices it. So in the prospect's brain, they're thinking, oh yes, I saw this out from that company, that's why this guy is calling me. So he's giving them a reason why there's a stranger calling them. One thing that I always like to add to disarm prospects even in a deeper way is either humor or a disarming statement. A disarming statement could be something like, hey prospect name, this is Chris, complete stranger. I don't want to throw you off, but I saw that you reached out because of X and Y and Z. So I'm using that disarming statement to put them at ease, try to be a little bit humorous, try to be a little bit playful. So then I can buy a few seconds to explain them why I'm calling so I don't get shut off easily.
Of what we do. Okay, that's going to depend on the industry and I'll show you a few different examples. Now, that's just one example of how to start an outbound call with connection questions. The next question, this is very generic. Hey, so when you went through the ad and you saw XYZ, what was it that they were, I guess, going over that caused you to, want to look into this further? Okay, that is just another connection question to get them to tell you why they're looking, but more importantly, who are they telling? They're telling themselves why they're looking. Now, there's a lot more to that. I'm just giving you kind of an overview in this video here on YouTube, okay? Now, inbound leads a little bit different. Let's say they book on your calendar.
This is where I'm starting to see a bit of a disconnect with what Jeremy's doing and what I have been doing. Overall, I find as we move on with Jeremy's scripts, they tend to be a little bit wordy. And Jeremy is brilliant at this. He's a master STR salesperson. So he can get wordy because he uses the right tonality. But when you hand these scripts into new salespeople who haven't sold millions and millions, they don't know exactly how to use this language. So when you get them to read 5 lines back to a prospect, they can trigger a lot of resistance. While I've used the script successfully, again, it takes a lot of practice to get to the level required to be able to use them correctly. So how I do it instead is I do a short version really, and whenever the prospect doesn't understand, I just probe and clarify and put it back on them. I like to lean much more on the prospect rather than the script. I like to get to know the person rather than becoming a master of scripts, and it's worked even better for me. So in this case, I would simply ask the person, so it looks like you booked in through an ad. May I ask, when you first click on the ad, what drew you in? Like, what piqued your interest, just out of curiosity? And the prospect might reply back with, yeah, I was just looking for ways to get more leads. And then we're right into the conversation, and I will ask them situation questions like, okay, and how do you generate leads right now? And we're right into it.
We now want to understand what their real situation is. Now, let's go to NEPQ situation questions. These are asked right after your connection questions. And what this does, it does two things. First of all, it helps you understand what the prospect's real situation is. Okay, why would you want to know what their real situation is? Because if you don't really understand what their real situation is, how are you going to build a gap to where they want to go if you don't really know where they're at, if you're guessing, or if you think that every prospect situation is the same you talk to? That's a huge mistake. You'll lose tons of deals because you don't really understand the real situation. So when you go in your presentation, you're presenting to something that you don't even know. You're guessing, you're throwing mud against the wall, hoping and praying something you're going to say is going to magically cause them to want to buy. I call that hoping. It's a drug a lot of salespeople take. Very hard and unpredictable way to make a really big living as a salesperson or scale your company or grow it. Even if you're a Fortune 500 company now, how are you going to increase sales next year by 30%?
The principle is 100% correct. I need to get the prospect to understand that their situation isn't sustainable. But the only way I can do that is by getting them to describe their situation to me, not for me to hear it, but for the prospect to hear their situation themselves. So by asking these questions, I need to get an understanding, and also they need to get an understanding around their situation specifically. But I will give you a more advanced way of doing it later on.
We're finding out more about what they're doing now for XYZ. Like I said, this is all going to be tweaked based on the industry. What are they using now? How long? What got them involved with it? What does their process look like, depending on what you sell? How many do they have? What are you doing now too? Like I said, I'm not going to ask all of these. These are just different generic starts to situation questions based on your industry, B2C, B2B.
These questions are perfect. Like, you can literally take them and deploy them. No complaints around them at all. They work great. And by the way, these are basic sales questions, right? Jeremy didn't invent this, that's FYI. These are questions that were asked from Greek philosophers back in the Socrates age, and it's the foundation of Socratic selling. Jeremy didn't invent this. He's bringing them to life, and I'm clapping for him, right? Nothing wrong with it.
A whole lot more to that. That's just kind of an overview. Okay, let's go into problem awareness questions here. I just showed you one right there, mainly situation questions. All right, now I'm going to show you problem awareness questions. Now, they do a couple things. Problem awareness questions help you build the gap from where the prospect is. We call that their current state to where they want to be. Now, we call that their objective state. Current state, here's where they are, current situation. Objective state, here's where they want to be. Here's what the future looks like when the newfound problems are solved. They also do this. They help you and them find out what their real problems are, not the surface level problems. What are the root causes of the problem? Okay, have you ever found out what's the root cause of those problems? Because most salespeople don't even know how to ask that to get them to open up and get them to realize there is a root cause of each of their problems. And most importantly, we're finding out how those problems are affecting them even personally. Even if you're talking to a Fortune 100 company and they're a department head, how are the problems affecting them personally, not just as a department or a business, or if they're a consumer, how it's affecting them personally, okay? Now I'm gonna give you a few examples. Well, let's go back here. We were just on health insurance, I'll just show you an example. So, I mean, you've been on XYZ plan the last 2 years. It's not a bad plan. I mean, what's caused you to feel like you might want something different? Same thing. Now I'm getting them to defend themselves on why they want something different. Okay, okay, what else would you change though if you could? That's a probing question, depending on their answer, okay? So is this your ideal coverage, or would you rather have something possibly better if you could? Depending on how they answer, these questions might change, okay? Or let's say, so when you've gone to the doctor and used that policy, did you like how they covered you? Did you like how they covered you? Okay, Now, it depends on how they answer their situation questions. If I'm going to ask this question, or even that first question up here, I'm basing that based off their answers for my connection and situation questions. Now, train a lot more of that in our virtual training portals.
This is where it gets a little bit muddy, right? Because he gives you different examples for different industries, and maybe you're not sure what to ask. You ask too many questions, the prospect gets confused. Here's how problem awareness works. After you go through the situation and you ask them, for example, okay, what are you doing right now to generate leads? How long have you been doing that? And what caused you to go with that direction? Then you need to get an understanding how that prospect feels about their current avenue, what they're using to go from what I call hell to heaven. Like their current process is, imagine it as it's a ship that's gonna get them from Hell Island to Heaven Island. So when you're asking them, what's your current situation? You're asking them, what ship are you on? What ship are you using to go from Hell Island to Heaven Island? So what you want to ask them, what Jeremy claims that you should ask them is, do you like the ship that you're on now? This question has become super repetitive, and pardon the language, it has been raped by salespeople. So I would avoid it at all costs. Different alternatives that you can use is how satisfied you are, or you can simply ask them, how do you like the results so far? You don't need to do the pause, the tonality, the confusion, because again, it takes mastery to do these things, and it's really a thing that I feel you're gonna spend a lot of time mastering for very little ROI. You can just ask them, okay, how do you like the results so far? And once they say, yes, I enjoy the results, then you need to find another problem to attack. If they say they don't like the results, you're gonna ask them, okay, well, what don't you like about the results? Or what else have you tried to get better results? And you can probe in that direction.
Obviously a free YouTube video. So when you get ready to go to the doctor, do you pick whoever you want to go to, or are you like forced to only use the doctors on the company's list? Oh, so they're making you go just to the doctors on their list though. See? Like if I'm selling a policy that covers out-of-network coverage, this is going to be a question that I'm going to seed in their mind. Or are they just forcing you? Forcing you. See, that's nobody in America or anywhere in the world likes to be forced or made to do anything. Okay, so that's just an example. There's a lot more to this we don't really have time to go through right now, okay? We're obviously going to clarify, we're going to probe off different questions and answers they give us, okay?
Now, this is what I'd like to highlight during problem awareness. These questions to a sophisticated prospect can be stupid simple. So when you ask these questions blindly to every single prospect, you can trigger some A-level personalities because, well, obviously, I don't like the results. That's why I'm on this call. So what I advise you is, as you get more and more sophisticated and more advanced, and as you get to know not your product, but who you're selling to, you can bring those prompts ahead of time. Let me give you an example. The other day, I was on a call with a CEO, 9-figure guy, highly sophisticated. I'm not gonna ask him, how satisfied are you with your current process? Because you're gonna raise the middle finger, he's gonna exit the Zoom session. So here's what I did instead. I said something like this. John, let me be clear here. I'm fully aware that in your level 9 figures plus, changing processes is the last thing that you want to do. What we have advised clients when they implement a new system is not to change anything, because that's expensive, that takes a lot of energy, and it can drive your team insane. That can be very costly for you guys. So don't tell me what you would change, tell me what you would augment. What systems need some reinforcement right now so we can get closer to our targets? And you can literally see his eyes lighten up, because he knew he was talking to a person who knows exactly what his problem is. If I asked that person, what would you change? He would see me as a rookie, he would fill me with objections, and he would never buy anything from me, because I'm asking him boilerplate questions that don't apply to his situation.
A lot more examples I could show you for every industry for solution awareness questions. All right, let's now look at NEPQ consequence questions. All right, I'll give you a few examples, different industries as well. So consequence questions really do 2 things. First of all, they help your prospect, they actually get your prospect to defend themselves on why they need to make the change, why they need to buy from you, okay? I'll show you what I mean by that, because you're not going to ask a consequence question the first couple of minutes of a conversation, because you haven't built a gap yet. You haven't built a gap from where they are to where they want to be. You haven't helped them find problems yet that might not have known they had. After I've done that, and emotionally open them up, I then can ask consequence questions where they defend themselves on why they need to change. I'll show you a few different industry-specific examples, okay? They also get them to question their way of thinking that's allowed the problems to keep happening, all right? So I'll give you a few generic versions, okay? These are generic, okay? Don't say these word for word because you don't want to use generic terms. You don't want to ask generalized questions because you're going to get generalized, generic, vague answers back from your prospects. That's not what you want, okay? Well, what if you don't do anything about this problem and it actually gets worse? Now, you're not going to say problem, you're going to say what the problem is. What if you don't do anything about, this low quality lead flow you're getting from vendor X and your sales keep going down every month? See, that would be specific if I was a marketing agency talking to a company.
Now, I'm about to hurt some NEPQ babies' feelings. I don't give a shit because I make 6 figures a month in commissions, so bite me. Here's what's happening and what's wrong with consequence questions. First of all, I love them, I use them, but not at the place where Jeremy has them. Because what happens right now with NEPQ, the way that it's being taught, is you're building up essentially their heaven state. You build them up, you build up this beautiful picture of excitement. The prospects tells themselves that here's how much money I want to make, here's what it will do for me, and here's what I'll achieve. And then the idea is you turn them down by asking a consequence question. However, these questions, number one, are not required on every single call. So if you do a good job during your discovery, your initial discovery process, when you find your problem awareness, right, where you find the main problem, and you re-ask that question, you can trigger the prospect to say, well, I just told you what's going to happen. And it can do more damage than good at that stage. It will not create urgency like it's supposed to, but it will put the prospect in the place of anger, and it will cause them to get triggered, instead of, again, making them feel miserable to make a change. The second reason is these questions tend to be overcooked. So when you ask a person, what happens if the problem isn't unsolved and you keep getting bad leads for the next 6, 12, 24 months, have you considered the possible ramifications of that? Now, this isn't the perfect question, but the example of it is you have a prospect that's highly emotional and you're throwing them a 2-sentence question that you expect them to answer. So a lot of times it won't land. You will need to ask the question again so it will start losing its power. And third, it will never really hit and achieve the intended purpose. Here's what I do instead. I ask the nightmare question whenever I find a deep pain point. So my questioning process will be something like this. I find the challenge, so what's holding you back from achieving your goals? They will say lack of leads. How long has been lack of leads the problem? Like how long have you been lacking leads? 5 months. Oh, 5 months, that's quite some time. How has that impacted the business? They will tell me, well, we're not getting enough sales, I have to fire people. And that's the perfect timing to ask them this consequence question. Well, if you haven't had leads for 5 months and you're already firing people, what's going to happen if you keep not having the right leads for the next 5 months? That comes in so much smoother, and we already have a person that's in pain. So you're covering past pain. They just told you that they haven't had good leads for 5 months. They are in pain now because they have to fire people, and you also add the future pain on top. So you have a nice triple-decker pain sandwich then and there, instead of trying to circle back, making them remember, and then doing another round of probing and clarifying. So my advice to you is use these consequence questions, but be strategic and feel out the prospect around when to ask them, and if you're gonna ask them right before your presentation, like Jeremy Miner intends to.
What happens if you don't do anything about this and you keep losing the bone density in your jaw, and now you can't even get the implants? So I'm going to start off challenging. Okay, let me show you that again. I'm starting with the challenging tone. I'm going to end it with a concerned tone, a tone that shows empathy. Okay? What happens, John, and on the flip side, because you certainly sound motivated, but what happens if you don't do anything about this and you keep losing the bone density in your jaw and now you can't even get the implants.
This is a great example of what I'm talking about. Jeremy is a master at this, but what he asks you to do at this point is to start with a challenging tone, and in the same question flip your tone to a concerned tone, which it will require tons of practice to land. It's a complicated question that includes not one but two tonalities that you have to perfect to really land this. And number three, when you ask it still with this perfect tonality to the wrong prospect at the wrong time, it will backfire. And that's what I mean when I say it starts getting too complicated and the ROI of deploying this is just not enough. Like the risk to reward ratio becomes a joke.
Is where we're going to commit them to take the next step and purchase what you're offering. Okay? Now, this is generic, but you can pretty much use this in pretty much every industry. I can lean in and say, after I brought up the pricing, all that stuff, the different options, whatever they have depending on what I sell. So this is after I brought up the pricing, funding they need, all that stuff. I can lean in and say, do you feel like this could be the answer for you?
Let's unpack this question. Do you feel this will be the answer for you? I wouldn't suggest using this variation because every single sales rep that has gone through this training is parroting this exact question, and the prospects listen to it and they're getting tired of replying to it. You can use the exact same framework but use different variations. So you can ask things like, do you feel this can get you to your goal? Use their actual goal. If they told you that they want to get to the million, ask them, well, do you, based on what we covered, do you feel this will get you to the 1 million? You can also say, like, do you feel this will help you? Like, just like that. You're putting it out there, it's clear, it's achieving pretty much the same objective, but again, without parroting the exact same language as everyone else. Now, what's my overall opinion on NEPQ, Jeremy Miner's sales system? I think it's a great system. I think if you're getting started out in sales, it will give you a great foundation when it comes to understanding basic human psychology, when it comes to asking the right questions, when it comes to getting the prospects to sell themselves. Where I feel it loses its power is when sales reps start to rely only on the system and the scripting and the framework, and they forget about the person that they're sitting across. That's where you start seeing all these role plays on Instagram with the exact same movements as Jeremy does, and instead of the person selling like themselves, they try to become Jeremy 2.0, 3.0, 5.0. The other part that never really resonated is the objection handling part. Now, let me be clear on this. Jeremy teaches objection handling and he has answers for every single objection. What I will say is, for me, it wasn't enough. With my personal experience, I had to pull back from objection handling techniques that I used to know, and I had to learn a ton more stuff to make the NEPQ objection handling, again, for me, effective. I want to highlight, Jeremy is a master sales professional, and if you saw the Jordan Belfort video, these people were born to sell. However, not everyone in sales was born to sell. There are some people out there who want to get the skills, regardless if they're salespeople or business owners, that they want a proven framework to say, hey, I don't have all the charisma in the world. I am not the smoothest talker, but I still want effective ways to handle objections. I don't feel NEPQ gives you the full scoop here. He will give you consequence questions to handle objections. He will give you frameworks to isolate, to get clear on what the objection is. But it doesn't have enough depth for you to have enough bullets in your chamber to say, when I'm on a sales call with someone, I have 5 different ways to handle their objection. So I can stay on the saddle, lean in with that prospect and get them to overcome themselves. So when I was learning NEPQ, again, I had to pull from my copywriting background, I had to pull from other sales training, I had to pull from sales psychology to understand the different types of prospects, who I'm selling to, so I can handle their objection, each objection that they had, effectively. So does NEPQ work in today's markets? Yes, it does, as long as it's not the only thing that you rely on for your sales education. Always remember to tweak the scripts and questions to fit your personality. Don't try to be, again, Jeremy 10.0 or a cheap copy of Jeremy. It won't work because you're not gonna have the natural ability that Jeremy has to mold and morph these questions to work. And number 2, you need to fill in the blanks and lean into the prospect, the person that you're selling to to really become masterful and maximize your sales. Now, if you want to see the exact 9-word sales script that I use to close more than 8 million in sales in a single year, watch this video right here and I'll see you over there.